It's a heck of a question, isn't it? I mean, it sounds completely absurd. But believe it or not, that's the exact metaphor a top military general used to describe a huge moment in international security. So let's dive in and really unpack what he meant by that.
So this powerful line comes from French three-star General Michel Yakovleff. And look, when a military leader with his kind of experience uses language that stark, you know it's time to sit up and pay attention. But to really get the weight of his words, you first have to know, who is this guy?
Well, we're talking about a commander from the French Foreign Legion, one of the most elite and tough military units in the entire world, who then spent 7 years as a senior leader at NATO. So this isn't just some opinion from the cheap seats. This is a seriously informed assessment from someone who gets alliances and warfare at the absolute highest level. Okay, so what sparked this whole Titanic comment? The general was on French television, and he was asked a really direct question. Should Europe jump in and support a U.S. call to action against Iran in the Strait of Hormuz? His answer was a very clear no. But he didn't just stop there. Oh no. He laid out exactly why. See, he didn't just say no and move on. He presented this methodical, 5-point critique that just completely dismantled the whole proposal. He moved from strategic flaws all the way to what he saw as a fundamental crisis of leadership. Let's break down his reasoning step by step. So his first 2 points get right to the heart of the problem, targeting what Yakovlev saw as just critical failures in the very foundation of the strategy. First off, he argued that the proposal just fundamentally misunderstands how an alliance like NATO is supposed to work. You can't just go it alone, running your own campaign with your own rules, and then turn around and ask your allies to chip in. A real alliance operation, he says, needs a single, unified command and a shared game plan. Anything less than that isn't an alliance, it's just chaos.
Second, and this might be even more concerning, was the lack of a clear goal. What was the actual mission? To open a strait? Force negotiations? Was it regime change? Yakovlev was insistent. Without a clearly defined objective, allies would be committing their troops to a complete black box, a conflict with no clear finish line.
Now, his next 2 points shift the focus a bit, moving from strategy to the leadership itself. And this is where he raises some really serious questions about communication and just basic reliability.
And right here, the general gets incredibly direct. He's arguing that warfare, by its very nature, demands stability and predictability. When people's lives are on the line, you need clear, consistent orders, not a strategy that changes with every single tweet. It's just a brutal takedown of what he sees as leadership by social media.
Then he brought up the elephant in the room, trust. Yakovlev pointed to recent history, the abandonment of allies like the Afghans and the Kurds, and he asked a really tough question. Why would we be any different? Alliances are built on trust, and he argued that this trust had been so seriously damaged that making any new commitment would be incredibly risky.
And that brings us to his 5th and final argument, the one he saved for last. You could really call it his knockout punch. And the most ironic part of all of this? It's a principle he learned directly from the U.S. military itself.
He actually credits the U.S. Army War College, one of America's own top institutions for strategic thinking, as the source for this wisdom. The fact that this critique is rooted in a principle taught by the U.S. military makes it land with so much more force.
And the crucial point is this. When a strategy is failing, you don't reinforce failure. You don't throw good money, or in this case, good lives, after bad. You have to have the courage to admit the mistake and change course. From where Yakovlev was sitting, joining the U.S. operation would be doing the exact opposite. It would be compounding an initial mistake with a potentially catastrophic one.
So this all leads to the core of his argument and brings us right back to that unforgettable Titanic metaphor. He makes this razor-sharp distinction between two very, very different kinds of sharing.
And this just perfectly illustrates his entire point. The ship has already hit the iceberg. The disaster is already in motion, but instead of getting people to the lifeboats, the captain is trying to sell dinner tickets to pretend everything is just fine. The invitation isn't to help save the ship. It's an invitation to go down with it.
This is the concept Yakovlev introduces, political liability. He's arguing that the U.S. wasn't really asking for help to win. It was asking for partners to share the blame if or maybe when the mission failed. And in his view, that's a chilling and deeply cynical calculation.
Let's break this down, because it's so important. On one side, you've got sharing military risk. That's what a true alliance is built on. It's all about a shared purpose, a mutual commitment. But on the other side, you have sharing political liability. That's not based on purpose at all. It's based on distributing blame. It's not about winning together. It's about making sure you don't lose alone. And for any ally, understanding that difference is basically a matter of survival.
So what are the big takeaways here? General Yakovlev's critique really goes beyond just one crisis. It's a masterclass in these timeless strategic truths. First, wars require clarity. Second, alliances require trust. And third, leadership requires the self-awareness to know when a strategy has actually failed.
And all of that leaves us with a critical question to think about, one that applies to any partnership, really, whether it's military, political, or even personal. At what point does an invitation to share a risk become a demand to share the blame for a failure? It's a really fine line, and crossing it can be the difference between a successful alliance and a sinking ship.